Ball chain. 3 million feet of ball chain every week. That's what today's guest manufactures. You know what ball chain is, right? I didn't. You will shortly. Plus, his 84-year-old family business has become the most trusted provider of masks in the United States. How's that for a pivot? Two vastly different products connected by a business owner who cares deeply for all aspects of his business. It's a very loving episode 611 of the 13-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Tim Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of caring marketing. I'm your host, Timbo Reid, and I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing ideas that help businesses exactly like yours to grow. How? Through weekly in-depth conversations with successful business founders. You, infinitely more importantly, you're a motivated business owner ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire it absolutely deserves to be. As per usual, team, there's marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. Jot down this domain name, outsourcingwebinar.com.au. On Thursday, November 10 at midday and then again at 7 p.m. to cover the world, I'll be running an outsourcing webinar. In fact, it's all about how to effectively outsource aspects of your business. You'll discover what it is and what it isn't, limiting beliefs around outsourcing. We'll bust through them, how it benefits your business and your well-being, the traps to avoid when outsourcing, what you could and should outsource, how to do it really effectively, what it should cost. We'll be joined by two absolute experts. Jeff Collinson is an outsourcing expert who owns and operates a business process outsourcing business in the Philippines. And we'll hear from longtime listener and past guest Scott Hunt, who'll share how outsourcing has helped grow his fitness empire exponentially. And we'll also be answering your questions. So register free, no obligation at all, at outsourcingwebinar.com.au. Do it now, then come back to this episode because you're going to love it. Today's guest owns and runs two businesses. One manufactures and sells 3 million feet of ball chain each week and was started in 1938 by his great-great-great-grandfather. I can already hear you asking, what the ball chain? Sit tight. You're about to find out. The other is a hygiene mask business that was started in 2020 in direct response to the pandemic, and in just 2 years has become the most trusted mask provider in the US. His name's Bill Taubner, and whilst he doesn't sell the sexiest products in the world, he is a business owner that cares deeply for his customers, his staff, his suppliers, and his local community. He's also a business owner that's crystal clear on his values and ensures they're evident in all his and his 100 plus staff's business dealings. And that's where today's big learning is for us all. As you'll hear Bill say on more than one occasion, great businesses should be a reflection of who you are and what you stand for. And he is a great example of it. Now, Bill can get on a bit of a roll, making it challenging for this little timid podcaster to get a word in on occasion, but do persevere as he shares some business and marketing gold once he builds up a head of steam. I started off asking Bill how it feels to be at the helm of a fourth generation business.
Well, Tim, I would say I'm proud of it. It's exciting. It's still exciting, even though it's fourth generation. But it's something that I'm very proud of. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into it every day, but I'm very proud of it.
Is there much reflection ever, Bill, or is it you always just forward thinking about in the moment and thinking ahead? Or do you find yourself times thinking, gee, I wonder what my great-great-great-grandfather was doing in 1938 when he started this show?
You know something? It's a good question. I do reflect upon that often. I think about my great-grandfather and my grandfather collectively building the business, having the courage to sort of go off on their own. My great-grandfather and my grandfather together had left their jobs with their respective company and started, our ball chain company in their garage. So very courageous for them to do it. And I feel very fortunate.
Is the heritage something that is inducted into your employees when they start?
There is, something, everyone here, we have a lot of employees that have been with us. We have about 100 employees. And we have many employees that have been here for decades. So we treat, our employees like our family. And we always do the right thing and treat people respectfully.
Respectfully. I got it.
Yes,
it's 5 a.m. where you are. I should have told people that. So you are excused for any words
right.
you trip over.
I'm in the middle of my first cup of coffee, which is, I'm going to have several of them, but it is 5 a.m. So I rolled out of bed around 4 a.m. this morning.
I've always wondered why you blokes call coffee Joe, a cup of Joe, don't you?
Something, I don't call it Joe. So I'm as curious as you are.
There you go. Well, so I'll do a Google search on that after we've finished.
I can tell you a little bit about the history and how it started if you're interested.
Sure. But like any business that started in 1938 and is still going strong today and having done a huge pivot, which we will talk about later, absolutely.
Sure. So thanks for that opportunity. So our business was incorporated in 1938. My great-grandfather and my grandfather started the business in their garage back in the 1930s. But prior to starting our business, my great-grandfather was one of the chief engineers for a big electrical company called Leviton Manufacturing. And he had left that job to become, to start our company over here. But just a little background on his talent. So his name was Franz Taubner. And if you look on the original, you've seen the light switch when you walk into a room that you just flip on and off, or you push button light switch. One of the original light switch patents, if you look at it in the United States, it has his name on it. So he had invented that light switch back then, but it was assigned to Leviton because that's who he worked for. But nonetheless, anyway, he ended up leaving the company and with my grandfather, and they built one ball chain machine in their garage, and started making ball chains. And my grandfather, not my grandfather, but my great-grandfather, but my grandfather would go door to door, during the day after they started getting this and going and trying to sell the ball chain. So that's sort of how it started. They subsequently they were successful with their business and they kept growing. And then they eventually moved into a small factory building in the Bronx. And then back in the 50s, bought a big piece of property in Mount Vernon, where we are now, which we've expanded upon considerably. And that's sort of laid the foundation for who we are now. But our company, and I can get into just how we've grown the company, but we make well over 3 million feet of ball chain every week right here in Mount Vernon, New York.
Hey, Bill, before you get into that, because that is an incredible stat and also an incredible backstory too. Clearly, there is some kind of inventor gene going on in your family. Is there? Although, did your family invent ball chain, or was that something they just picked up along the way?
No, they didn't invent it. It was out in the marketplace, but on a much smaller scale. So it actually originated in Europe, and I think it was Austria to begin with. So it had been used, as I mentioned, on a smaller scale on some electrical devices.
When the pitch from your publicist came through, it absolutely fascinated me because the very first thing, all I could see was ball and chain. And I'm like, surely they don't make ball and chain anymore. That's what us convicts came out in when we came to Australia from England. So then I realised what ball chain is. And the first thing that fascinated me, Bill, was the fact that some people make money in the most unusual ways and I'm not suggesting, and I say that very respectfully, but ball chain is just not something I have ever given any consideration to. Yet here you are producing 3 million feet a week. It's fantastic. Do you want to just explain what it is and some of its primary uses before we get stuck into the business of ball chain?
Of course. So most people would be familiar with it, seeing it and on military dog tags. And I think your marketplace over there, people would probably know those, right? The military dog tags, the tags hang from a chain, and that's a ball chain. But you'll also see it on ceiling fans, So there's a little chain that you see that roller shades. To, I think you have a lot of roller shades in your marketplace where they have a chain that mechanism that drives the roller shades up and down. So that's pretty much the product, but it's a bunch of connected balls. So it's a spherical type of ball, and then it's got a connecting link in between each ball. So it's a very unique product because it doesn't tangle. And it's very flexible, and I can get into some of the multitude of uses, and that's what makes it actually very attractive, just the versatility of the usages.
From a marketing standpoint, I imagine, well, it wouldn't be difficult to market, but you have such a diverse range of buyers. Everything, as you say, from military to blind manufacturers to fan manufacturers to is the nature of your product one that they just come to you? You're the biggest manufacturer of it in the world. Are they just knocking down your door, or do you have to actively market yourselves to each of these industries individually?
So we always have to actively market ourselves, but we've succeeded over here. I would put one of the main reasons why we've succeeded is product diversification and also market diversification. But product diversification, when I say that, our product, in terms of like broad usages of our product, and our product is probably one of the few products that you will find, if not the only one, that basically is used in the toilet. So it's used for the plunger chain that if you open up the guts of the toilet, you'll see either a chain or something that's attached to the arm and then to the plunger. And then that particular chain, that same type of chain that's used in that toilet, we make out of sterling silver and is sold by companies like Tiffany and high-end jewelries.
So how hilarious.
So if that gives you a range, there are very few probably toilet parts that are also used in high-end jewelry. But getting into the product diversification of that, one of the things I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but I can sort of speak to some of your listeners, as far as with their products. But product diversification is key to many different things, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sell to a different market or anything like that. But we've done a good job over here. When I first came on board as working here, and became president, but prior to that, we used to sell a lot of our chains on spools. So in other words, that basically if you needed 10,000 feet for some sort of, let's say, blind project or something that you were going to make jewelry chains on, you would buy 10 spools of 1,000 feet or maybe 20 spools of 500 feet each, and then a whole bunch of connectors. We'd ship them to you, and then you try to figure out a way to cut them and then put them together. And we did a lot of that for many years, but one of the things we invested in over here by listening to the marketplace were the difficulties that people are having, finishing that final assembly. So we started to automate even more over here. So by building machinery over here that we're cutting our chains and putting those connectors on automatically. And that over there made our product a lot more attractive to our customers, because the cutting of the chain and then the assembly of it made it easier for people to buy it, took out the labor costs that they were investing over there, and also any time as well. So all of a sudden we were giving a finished product to people where they didn't have to worry about that extra step. So that was very important to our customers. So that enabled us to build, but we looked for that within the marketplace. So if I had to speak to tell your listeners, they have a product over there, it's really important to understand marketplaces. So let's take the window industry, if you don't mind. Is that okay, the track that I'm going right now?
I think so. I like the idea of understanding marketplaces, absolutely, because I've talked about this often on this podcast over the years, where as business owners, we really do need to understand our market. Not only where are the opportunities and are we maximizing them all, but the people within those marketplaces, what are they thinking and feeling about what we do? So please go on.
Yeah. So when one of the things that I would encourage any business owner to do is obviously knowing your product, knowing the marketplace, but there's also no substitute for hard work. You've got to have that in there too. So that's one of the reasons I get up every morning so early. And before I get into what I'm going to get into, I would like to say, even though I'm in here anywhere, yesterday I was in here at 3:30 in the morning. Most days I'm here around 4 a.m. But the thing is that as a business owner and an entrepreneur, I never roll out of bed and go, oh, nuts, I got to go to work. I'm excited to go to work every day. And it's been, a long time and many years, but every day I get excited about coming to work. But getting back into the marketplace. So let's just take the window industry, for example. And knowing that marketplace. So one of the things is just like I did a lot of market research and visiting customers, talking to customers. I think that's very important, making those connections as a small business owners with your customers, knowing the buyers, knowing their what makes them successful, what's difficult for them, what they're seeing in the marketplace, visiting trade shows, doing your research online, using the product yourself. There's no substitute for that. And then using your creativity and your entrepreneurial skills to basically make your product better, but also offer better services with your product to your customers.
Bill, can I just pause you there because you're on an absolute roll, and I know I'm going to find it hard to find gaps here because I love your passion. Those visits that you pay to your prospects, your customers, these trade shows, I think it's wonderful. As president of a big, large company, that you doing that says a lot about the belief you have in your product, because I'd hasten to guess that you're probably in the minority of senior business owners who do that. We sort of get, I imagine, and it's, it's a reflection of we get lost in the busyness of business, and there's always something more important than going out, into the marketplace and asking a few questions, but very powerful and clearly has had a huge impact on the growth of Ball Chain.
No, you're absolutely right. It's had a gigantic impact. So getting back to that a little bit. So by understanding, so one of the first things is just we did was visiting customers, going to the trade shows, understanding what made them successful. So that's how we ended up. We literally built machines to cut and invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into machinery to cut these chains and loop them. So we were providing finished products to people. We offered packaging to people to make, packaging the products to make their lives easier. And then we got into one of the things that, as a window product over there, we used to just offer what we call nickel-plated product, which is sort of like a chrome finish on product. And then we used to offer a brass product and a stainless steel product. But one of the things we started to understand is the business expanded, and windows, roller shades obviously became very decorative. People were looking for new finishes. So we then started offering antique finishes, and all these things that I'm talking about over here, we led the marketplace. And that's one of the things that I think are important too. When you're basically running a business and you have competition, it's looking for the gaps in the marketplace. And if you're fortunate, there are gaps, but taking advantage of those, but listening to your customers.
But just on that, when you talk to a customer, and it sounds like you talk to many, and therefore you are getting a lot of feedback. And I'm sure you have staff out there as well getting feedback and passing it on. At what point do you go, that's a good idea, we're going to action it? Because you can't action every idea, and often an idea isn't a good idea, right? So what do you have a criteria? Is it a gut feel? Are you a number cruncher? What allows you to decide when an idea needs implementing?
There's a combination of all that. If you saw my desk, I have these little Post-it notes on my desk. I have piles of them. And every time I get an idea throughout the day, I write a little note down. And I will basically compile those ideas into a spreadsheet at the end of each day, and I'll prioritize them. The most important thing it's got to make sense for everybody. So yes, so there's a business part of it, so that you look at it as, does this make sense for our business? But the most important thing I would say is, like, from a long-term perspective for your business and your company, does it make sense? And what is it going to expand the marketplace?
Can I just be clear that you do this on a daily basis? I mean, there are some business owners that wouldn't do this on a yearly basis, but you are, I love it. You have an idea obsession, a desk full of sticky notes. You then pile into a spreadsheet at the end of the day. Is that what happens to that spreadsheet? I'm fascinated by your innovation process now. Is there a weekly meeting or is there?
No, there isn't. So I'll cull through it. And, the funny thing is, like, when you have ideas and you're taking care of your business, and especially as a small business owner, I'm sure this would fit for everybody, but people have ideas. At the end of the year, I always look back and I'm like, okay, what are my priorities? And I'll so at the end of the year, I do a little, I would say, summary, and I'll say, like, what have I done? And you'll figure out that there's a lot of accomplishments that you've made, which is good. So it's good to look at those, the wins and your losses. And then I make a plan for the next year. What's going to be my main priorities? And that'll change. And a lot of the ideas will be like, okay, I don't go crazy with it. So you have, 10 million ideas. But so I'll make the ones that make sense and I think are good long term. But a lot of that comes down to they are business. You have to look at the numbers on it. Of course, it's got to make sense. You also can't be overly distracted by having 1 million things going on. So there's got to be a focus.
Do you have someone with a very large broom bill that follows you around, picking up the ideas and making sure that things do get actioned, or are you really is part of you a control freak?
Now I have a great team over here, so that's part of it too. So when you're running a business, surrounding yourself with good people. Great people, is even better. And making sure that I'm a big team person. So in other words, I grew up, a lot of team sports. And I believe in the fact that people have to, play their position. But you can't be successful unless you have a good team because you can't do everything. So I work with my brothers. I have some extremely talented people that work around me, marketing people, sales people, engineers, workers, plant managers, and all these people play different roles. And they will, when we figure out our priorities and if there's something a directive that we're working on, we'll all get together and do it. And I'll pass along the responsibility to certain people. And they always come through for us.
Bill, just to finish that idea discussion, because I am fascinated by it, I'd love to know what idea that you've had in the business are you most proud of? And it doesn't necessarily mean the one that's generated the most money. I'll let you decide how you choose that. And at the time, did you think it was a winner or was there doubt?
When I first started working at Ball Chain over here many, many years ago, my dad had me working in every aspect of the business. And one of the things that I saw over here, from a sales part of it, customer service part of it, production part of it, was that our lead times were extended out from 4 to 6 weeks on average. And one of the things that just after listening to customers, talking to people over here, was that there's significant customer dissatisfaction because of it. So we started on a priority and a mission to cut that lead time on average from let's say the 5 to 6 weeks to 1 to 2 weeks. And it took about 6 months to a year, but that really was probably the most important thing that we did as a company over here. And probably one of the proudest things that I did as far as, I don't want to say so we did over here as a company that really sort of changed, I think, everything. So that enabled us we had a lot more, when you have customer satisfaction and people that are enthusiastic for your product and getting the product in time and the quality product, that resonates with your customers. And that enables you to have positive conversations. People are enthusiastic about the product, and that's one of the most important things I can say is that's making sure that your customers are satisfied with the quality, with the delivery times. Obviously, pricing is important. And I know it's easy to say that, but it's most important to come through on that. I can't emphasize that enough. So that actually changed our business trajectory over here. And that's when we really started to grow.
Bill, you clearly make a quality product. The fact that you supply Tiffany's with ball chain says everything. Ball chain, I imagine, is something that is easily, I'm using air quotes there, easily copied. And there would be many, many copycats of far lesser quality. You are 100% manufactured in America. You're not sending anything offshore. So I imagine there's a whole lot of poor quality copycats that give your industry a bad name. A, am I right? And B, what's your mindset around them?
Yes and no. There are copycats. There are always companies out there that basically that provide our competition. And I'm not going to speak fully about the competition, but I think we're from a quality standpoint and everything, we're the best in the industry. But I don't necessarily get too focused on the competition in the sense that from being demoralized or anything like that, because obviously producing in America is not the least expensive place in the world. So you certainly could produce, our product overseas and Far East and stuff like that. And there are a lot of companies that produce it over there. But from a quality standpoint over here, that's where adding those product enhancements that I talked about before, that's the most important thing, the diversification. We've, over the last few years, have acquired a few different companies, a couple different companies, but one of the companies that we acquired was a painting company, and this painting company actually was a company that we co-developed a proprietary process where we paint our ball chains over here in different colors, white, black, or whatever Pantone color that nobody in the marketplace has been able to match. And so when the roller shades go out into the marketplace, now we can offer white, we can offer black type of chains and other colors. And that's basically, that also is important from a product diversification standpoint. So our competitors, it's staying ahead of your competitors over there, but adding the business quality, the services that are offered, the cutting, the connecting, and also offering to different marketplaces that, so it's staying one step ahead of the competition. I also do a lot of marketing to places where our competitors are, because I also feel from a business standpoint that you don't want to be in a marketplace and then just always being, reactive to your competitors. You also want to make them work a little harder too in their marketplaces for their business. So I'm not only focused in our market over here, but I'm focused in the markets where they are as well. I think that's important too, from a business competitive standpoint.
Bill, the pandemic comes along in March 2020, and you make a ball chain. The business makes a most unusual pivot, I would say, into masks, given that there is no relationship between ball chain and masks, as far as I can tell. Yet it's been an incredibly successful pivot. In fact, you say you're the most trusted mask provider in the US. Tell us about the day that sticky note got written and put on your desk. Let's get into masks.
Yeah, so that was an interesting time period. So at the beginning of the pandemic back in, I believe it was March 2020, it might have been early April, but I think it was March. A good friend of mine, this fellow Mike Ramita, who's the president of a business advocacy association that's nearby, called the WCA, Westchester County Association. He called me on a Friday evening. I actually remember it clearly because I was sitting at home having a slice of pizza at my dinner table, and my wife was sitting next to me. And Michael called me and told me, he's like, Bill, he's like, we're getting so many calls from hospitals now and, other healthcare places where, they can't find PPE. And he was talking specifically masks. And he goes, we're desperate, Bill. He's just like, you're one of the larger manufacturers in the county over here. And I thought of you immediately, and I wanted to know if you can make masks in your factory. And even though I'm not familiar with the machinery that make masks, I knew that our ball chain machinery was not going to spit out masks tomorrow morning or even, the next day or next month. So I politely told Michael, I was like, I know what's going on out there and it's scary. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to make these things. I'm so sorry. So, we exchanged some niceties and I hung up. And my wife sitting next to me reminded me of a phone call she had earlier that day. One of my dearest friends is a famous doctor and very involved in one of the main hospitals down in New York City. And his wife is a gynecologist, and she was talking to my wife that day, telling how terrible it is in the hospital, and with all the people dying and the lack of PPE, and it's just desperate situations. And my wife has basically told me, is like, see what you can do. It's, if there's anything you can do, can you make them there or help some way? So that was a catalyst. And so, like everything else, so that evening, I think instead of going to bed and waking up at 3 a.m., I think I stayed up till like 3 a.m., started doing research in the marketplace. And obviously I have some business partners overseas. So I asked them to, find out about the manufacturer and the masks in China. That's where I looked, because that was a natural place for the manufacturer. And I also had some very trusted business partners over there. So that sort of served as the foundation for what we built. But as far as the product is concerned, when I say trusted, the first thing we did there is just like,
Bill, I just want to pause you there before you. The idea that introducing masks into the business, it's clearly been a good one, and you can tell us how successful it's been shortly. But did you not at your first inclination was, hang on, our core business is ball chain. We're good at that. We can't disrupt that. We need to continue to grow that. Why did you think you had the capacity to introduce a completely new product that you weren't even going to manufacture? You were just going to import and wholesale. What made you thought that was a good idea at the time, outside of the fact that there was demand?
I didn't even look at it that way. The big thing for me was like, it was sort of like the right thing to do. So, and that's sort of what our business, if I had to tell people, what's how to run a business and stuff like that, I think business should be reflective of who you are. So, and our business over here is reflective of who we are. And I mean, that's my family. So it was the right thing to do. And that's why we embarked down that path. And because it was the right thing to do, we also wanted to do it the right way. So by doing it the right way, and that means, as I started to learn about the marketplace, and like anything else, that any type of business that you're going to get into or anybody gets into, you have to understand the marketplace. You have to do your research. You have to do your hard work. And so that's what I did. I spent, I don't know, and my brother too, we spent weeks, just doing our research on the marketplace, seeing what's out there, having our business partners go to different factories. We started to understand the legal areas in the United States, what the FDA was authorizing, and basically we ultimately settled on two mass manufacturers that had been FDA authorized, had a long track record of making masks. Were famous mass manufacturers over there. And because once we found those manufacturers, we also decided from supply chain standpoint, because we read about all the counterfeiting out there, there's so many nefarious people in the marketplace. We said that the only way we're going to get involved with this is if we have direct relationships with these manufacturers. And we vowed, and we still do, we vowed never to buy from any intermediaries, agents, or third parties. We would only deal direct with the manufacturers, and only and handle all the logistical and warehousing distribution ourselves in order to maintain that supply chain integrity. So that was the most important thing. So we were very transparent about that, and that was so important. So, and as far as the mass market is concerned, I wasn't even thinking about, oh my God, this is going to be a good business opportunity. I didn't really care at that point. It was a matter of just helping out. And that's what we did.
So, Bill, how successful has the pivot into masks been for the business?
It's been very successful. It's been most rewarding in getting into, like, from a business part of it. I would say it's been the most rewarding thing, and I don't mean from a monetary wise. I mean just from a personal side. It's been most rewarding for for me and our family and our business over here on how much we've helped people. And I think that's part of it too. Being in business, sometimes good things happen to good people, I guess. But it's been, I think we probably have distributed and sold well easily over 100 million masks since this whole thing has started, probably 150 million.
Incredible.
Yeah, but we've helped so many people, and every day we get emails and calls and texts I get from people who have been just so happy and just so, just about what we've done and how much we helped. Because it's just, I don't know if you know the marketplace about the masks and just all the people that basically, were buying fake masks and all the counterfeits.
Yeah, rorting the system. Absolutely. Yeah. I've seen it as a consumer. You see it all the time.
It's just like the reflection, the business, we ran the business on our business values over here, and that's what we created. So do it the right way. And that's what we did with the supply chain. We basically saw the issues that were in the marketplace, all these people, and you can still see it, the counterfeiting out there, the people who are sort of misrepresenting the product, saying like, oh, buy this 5-layer mask because it's got 5 layers. It's great. But it may not meet, these people are selling it may not meet standards. So that's finding that marketplace, the products out there that people are looking for. That's one of the things people are looking for, authentic product.
Making a pivot into masks, which is completely unrelated to your core business, did it have a positive or a negative impact on Ball Chain, or a neutral impact? It was just business as usual.
Oh, extremely positive. And one of the things that people, obviously during the pandemic, one of the issues that everyone had was the slowdown in all businesses. Businesses were closed. If people weren't, from a Ball Chains, people were not shopping for, high-end jewelry at that point. So what ended up happening was that, and people weren't redoing. We have another product line, and I should, if you allow me to talk about it, it's called Shimmer Screen, and that's an entrepreneurial thing that I would like to share with people. But anyway, it's had a very positive effect because it enabled us to maintain our employees over here. So we had people, instead of making ball chains, because the demand for ball chains had dried up quite a bit, not 100%, but quite a bit. We had people in our factory, instead of laying them off, during the pandemic, we had people packaging masks. Like literally, we had 40, 50 of our workers just packaging masks all day. So it had an extremely positive effect in that sense.
So you're one of those businesses that didn't have to lay a whole lot of staff off because of the pandemic. You'd actually pivoted and found something that you could direct their energies to. Bill, you talked about, I loved your quote earlier about business should be reflective of who you are. And that's a great, and the way you introduce masks into the Ball Chain business is a great example of that. I'm just wondering if you could share another example of that, because you're clearly, you're a business owner who is very strong on values, very clear on your values. And, so often that can just be motherhood statements, and they're never actually implemented into the business. You implement them into the business. So another example of where this has really worked for you.
One of the things that when someone buys a order on our website at bonafidemask.com, so when someone places an order, they get an email confirmation, and most people get that from all business. So if you place an order for boots, clothing, whatever, you place the order and you get an email saying thanks for your order, blah blah blah. So our customers get that too, but they also get a 3 or 4 paragraph little letter from me that I wrote personally that tells about our business, about our values, and why it's important to me, that we're just what we're doing over here. So it tells our story and also makes it gives that feel like they're buying something personal from us and from me over here. And that letter goes out, and in that letter it's got my cell phone number too. So I get, I encourage people if they have any issues to call me. That's one of the transparency things and people ask me like, why, we have probably 1 million customers, and people are like, what are you, crazy putting your cell phone out there? And I was like, one of the things that I knew about this marketplace was the fact that people were concerned about the counterfeits, about the transparency. So I tell people, I was like, listen, if you have any concerns, any questions or whatever, call or text me. And even though we get hundreds of thousands of people get that email and see that number, I'm not overwhelmed by phone calls, but I do get a lot of texts and calls every day. And I'll give you an example. Like, for example, yesterday I received a text just randomly from somebody, and somebody sent me a text that said, "Hi, Bill, do you still answer your texts, or is this a customer service rep?" That's to my cell phone. So I replied, "I answer." So this particular customer then replied, "Well, as a former 914 resident," that's our area code for the phone number here. "Well, as a former 914 resident, now relocated to the Charlotte, North Carolina area, I appreciated your note that followed my order confirmation of masks earlier this year. Found it as I looked to reorder today. And while it's hard to know what's real nowadays, finding kids' masks at work was appreciated, especially with a young daughter that is just finishing up treatment for leukemia."
What a great note.
Yeah, so I called the gentleman, thanked him for his note. More importantly, just wanted to see how his daughter was doing. And then we exchanged some niceties. He was from the Bronx, so the New York Yankees had been playing yesterday. Just literally had started when we were talking, and so we were just talking about that for a moment. I hung up, and right after I hung up, one of the New York Yankees hit a home run to take the lead. So I called him right back, and so we had a nice little laugh about that, and he sent me a nice note. But the point being over there is, like, connecting with your customers on a sincere way is really important. And that's when I say, when you're running a business, the business should be reflective of who you are, and consistent with you and your values and everything else. And that's what I try and sort of convey across over here. And it's very nice. And this is another text I got yesterday. Do you mind if I read this one too?
Go for it.
This is from a fellow, and he texted me last night at 8:41 p.m. He said, "Hi, Bill. I just read the beautiful history of your company dating back to your great-grandfather in the Bronx. I grew up in the Bronx in the 1940s, early 1950s, and recognized something familiar in your attitude, work ethic, and commitment to doing the right thing. I just love everything about it. Barry."
Oh, fantastic.
Those are the type of things that, they're priceless. And, it's making those connections with the customers and being true to yourself. And that's what the mask part of the business reflects. So it's not about just selling masks, and it's not about just selling ball chain. It's not about but it's about doing the right thing. So and that brings a lot of pride and happiness to me as well. So, and I think when you have that type of thing and doing the right thing, the success will follow. But, understanding your customers, connecting with your customers, building your business on that.
Never a true word spoken. Bill, I went into this interview thinking, okay, ball chain and masks, and again, with respect, they're not the sexiest, most exciting products out there on the market. But what I've learned from you, and I hope my listeners have as well, is that the excitement comes from the way you go about growing, marketing, developing the business, and of course pivoting the business as well. And you get a lot of joy from that. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. And there's a lot to be learnt from the way you go about running a fourth generation business. So thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to encourage people, if they do need ball chain, if there are any listeners out there, go to ballchain.com or go to bonafidemasks.com if you want to grab some masks. I don't know whether you ship globally, Bill, but I certainly do have listeners in other countries beyond the great shores of Australia.
Oh, thank you so much, Tim. And one last thing, I'd like to just thank my family, my wife, my kids, Bill and Catherine, who I'm so proud of. They're so supportive of me and everything, and my dad and my brothers and our employees over here and our customers and everyone. And we are, just so everybody knows, my wife is half Australian, and we want to get over there someday soon.
That's one proud business owner. Bill Taubner, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Well, there you go, team. Ball chain manufacturer, mask distributor, and all-round caring good guy, Bill Taubner. Now, of course, as often happens, not often, but every now and then it happens, after I hit the stop record button, my guest shares something that I wished I'd recorded. So, and Bill did that. He just made a comment further around how he hears and finds ideas and then implements ideas to grow his business. In regard to the ball chain business, he had a private individual, a lady, who ordered a lot of ball chain, and he was a bit perplexed as to what she was possibly doing with it. So he reached out to her and she was making window furnishings from it. And as a result, and they look absolutely amazing. And as a result, he started a website called shimmerscreens.com. And it's, again, a great example of innovation, listening to the customers and then implementing an idea you heard. And as a result, Bill's got another revenue stream in his business. I'll put a link to Shimmer Screens in the show notes of this episode so you can have a look, because it's pretty cool. I do love Bill's take on being a business that genuinely cares for its customers, its staff, its suppliers, its local community. I actually think there's a book in there somewhere. Bill, write a book. It'd be an awesome book. The Book of Caring, Marketing and Caring. Caring Marketing. There you go. I've got the book on helpful marketing. He could have the book on caring marketing. I especially love Bill's quote about how your business should be a reflection of who you are. Absolutely. Always think with business owners, you start something and then you sort of lose a bit control as the business becomes bigger and bigger and, more staff come in. But yeah, maintaining that reflection of who you are and your values is so important. Are you a business owner that cares? I'd love to know how this shows up in your everyday business life. Call the Small Business Big Marketing Hotline and let us all know. Maybe we can learn something from you. 0480 015 150 and let us all know. Just like long-time listener and very motivated business owner, Chris Sullivan did.
Hey there, Timbo. It's Chris Sullivan from your local tyre centre in Rosebud, Victoria. Just a quick shout-out to say how much we appreciate everything that you send through to us via your podcast. I've been listening to you for probably well over 7 years and look forward to each episode that comes out. The biggest takeaway and maybe the foundation of my business that I've built is being helpful. Helpful and helpful marketing is really what our core is about. So in some cases, I say to our customers, first, we're helpful. Second, we make $1. I think that's fair for everybody. It's honestly what we do. And it's all because of your efforts through this podcast. Keep up the good work, mate. I look forward to each episode, and we'll keep listening and talk again soon.
Chris, you know how much I appreciate your long-term support of my podcast. Thanks, brother. And what an appropriate voicemail to play following my chat with Bill Hay. I love Chris's comment about first we're helpful and then we make $1. Chris has a small business that cares. Helpful marketing is absolutely where it's at. Hey, little plug for Chris. If you're in Melbourne and need some tyres fitted at home or at work, check out Chris's business, yourlocaltyretruck.com.au. Everyone else, please be like Chris. Call me on 0480 015 150 and share your best marketing tip. If you're overseas, you can still call me. Just add a +61 at the start and drop the 0. So +61 480 015 150. Got some super duper guests coming your way in the coming weeks. We'll hear from one of Australia's leading e-commerce specialists who's just written the e-commerce for Dummies book. We'll catch up with a world surfing champion who's now on a mission to help people find their purpose in life, and a branding expert who shows us how to build a brand people want to work for, buy from, and invest in. Cha-ching! Oh, and by the way, I have just secured an interview. I only did this morning with Powderfinger's drummer, all in the spirit of talking about the business of music. Can't wait for that one. If you're overseas, Google Powderfinger, one of the great Aussie rock bands of the 90s. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button on your favourite podcast app where you'll find 610 more chats with successful business founders. This show was stitched together by editor extraordinaire Alex Amster and the music bed written, sung, produced by our in-house rock star Lockie Doley. Thank you so much for tuning in. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.